African Lodge number 459 in the April number of The Voice, page 298 to 306, 1876. This Prince Hall body was formed in Boston in 1808 out of the subordinates in Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, created by charters issued by Prince Hall himself as Worshipful Master of African Lodge number 459 before his transition, which occurred in 1807. There were in Massachusetts two sets of lodges, those under the jurisdiction of England and those under Scotland. During the Revolutionary War, the former organized a St. John Grand Lodge and the latter a St. Andrew's Grand Lodge on account of differences as to esoteric work. How you going to have disagreements in esoteric work? Truth does not change nor pass away. In neither of these was the African Lodge ever included, nor was she present March 5th, 1792, when the two bodies above named united and formed the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, with Brother John Cutler as Grand Master. According to Brother Griswold, African Lodge wrote to the Grand Lodge of England in 1824, excusing itself for not paying its dues or communicating with it, on the ground that it had not been able to meet for several years on account of the death of these who obtained its warrant. You all was paying dues to England. Y'all was paying dues to the colonizers who was killing off your own brothers and sisters. This is admitting you was paying dues to England and subordinate to England. England don't have no jurisdiction in the Americas. The letter was written under the impression that the lodge was still under the jurisdiction of England, whereas Brother Griswold himself says that its name and number, along with all other Massachusetts lodges, were stricken from the English register in 1813. And they wrote them when? 1824? But at least England should have seen that they was at least keeping maintenance of it. When did African Lodge number 459 become Prince Hall Lodge? And when did the latter become Prince Hall Grand Lodge? The first question we cannot answer, but the second we have already answered in 1808. Now then we ask, what was Prince Hall Lodge writing to the Grand Lodge of England in 1824 for? About lodge dues. If it had any allegiance to owe, it must certainly have been to its own Grand Lodge, the Prince Hall Grand Lodge. Yet what was it doing between 1808 and 1824 that it did not know that in 1813 its name had been struck off by the Grand Lodge of England? Furthermore, what was the Prince Hall Grand Lodge doing that it allowed its daughter of the same name without the Grand to offer to send dues to England? If it was argued that it was the Prince Hall Grand Lodge which wrote to England in 1824, how will Brother Griswold account for a sovereign grand body paying dues to another, especially when those dues must have been collected from subordinates of which the foreign Grand Lodge never heard? It was not the grand body which wrote, for it alludes to the transition of its members who obtained the warrant, as grand bodies do not receive or work by warrants. The truth is that African Lodge number 459 died in the early years, and its master, Prince Hall, held occasional meetings in his own house under the charter he should have returned. And the so-called meetings under the charter were called Prince Hall Lodge meetings, and not being recognized by then existing legitimate bodies, without any authority on the face of the earth, charters to a few persons in Pennsylvania and Rhode Island, after which he transitioned 1807. And his institution, elastic as it was, being about defunct, these illegitimate subordinates in the next year, 1808, organized a so-called Grand Lodge and named it after the master Prince Hall, and thus we have the birth of the Grand Body, in defiance of the supreme Masonic authority then existing. Even granting that it was regularly organized in 1808, we have the sublime, spectacular farce of its ignorance of its own existence for 16 years, and apologizing to the Grand Lodge of England in 1824 for not being able to write letters or pay dues as a subordinate lodge under the self-assumed title with the Grand left off, and this too 11 years after its name was officially stricken from the English register. So the best things I can tell the Prince Hall brothers is leave them alone. Forget them. Go to the Moorish Science Temple and get the real gnosis. All of them was chasing Moorish mysticism back in the day anyway. And it was Moorish scientists who they got their information from. And then they started doing all this BS to it. So go to the Moors. I told you you was looking to know thyself, and they knew you was coming, but they wanted to keep you blind and deaf.